Are you overwhelmed with negative self-talk and not sure how to stop it? Most negative self-talk is made up of cognitive distortions. I'm going to help you understand how distortions are under your negative self-talk, how they actually strengthen your negative self-talk and exacerbate it over time, and then how you can reframe these so you can begin to solve this problem. So to illustrate how cognitive distortions are under our negative self-talk, I'm going to use two relatively common situations. One is where you feel like you are just a terrible parent. You have kids, it's struggle, you're challenged, all of that stuff, and the negative self-talk just jumps in. And the other is somebody who just feels they have horrible boundaries. So I'm going to identify what the common cognitive distortions are in each of these situations, and then also how they reinforce the negative self-talk and then reinforce the problem. So stay with me. So the example of feeling like you're a terrible parent came to me like that this weekend because I was taking care of my grandchildren, a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old. And while a lot of it was really fun, since I'm the grandma, I was there full time, and it is challenging. And it brought up all the challenges of when I was raising my 3 kids and how difficult a job, how demanding, right? And how easy it is to feel you are doing it wrong. So in that situation, someone who tends to have a lot of negative self-talk could be saying like, I feel like I am a lousy parent and therefore I am. That's the cognitive distortion of emotional reasoning. Or it could be my 3-year-old hasn't learned to share and just keeps stealing toys from the other kids in daycare. Therefore, I'm a terrible parent and I'm doing something wrong. That's the cognitive distortion of blame and personalization, particularly because that's a very common problem, and learning to control that impulse takes time. That part of our brain that does impulse control, it doesn't fully develop until way later in life. So as a parent, part of our job is to help kids develop that impulse control, but a lot of them, boom, don't have it. And in that situation, say that same 3-year-old is healthy and doing well otherwise in school, is meeting a whole bunch of benchmarks, right? But as a parent, the only thing you can focus on is that grabbing of the toys from others or bashing another kid with a toy, right? So you are disqualifying all of the positive. That's a cognitive distortion, disqualifying the positive and the mental filter of focusing on the negative. The disqualifying the positive would actually be the, yeah, well, of course she's healthy. Yes, of course she's doing all these other things, but any parent would have been able to help her get there, right? That's disqualifying the positive and then the mental filter focusing on the negative. Other examples could be that you have a kid who's hyperactive and you just blame yourself. You might blame your spouse or the other parent. You might end up blaming your parents for how you were raised, for then how you're raising this child, right? The blame, the personalization goes all over. And just to throw in that one area where this kind of negative self-talk based in these cognitive distortions limits us from finding solutions is that if we are blaming ourselves or someone else for the problem or focusing solely on the problem, we're not looking for solutions for that particular problem. So, for example, if you have a kid who's in a daycare that really isn't outdoors a lot and isn't active enough, it's not a good fit for the child. But rather than focusing on the personality of the child, physiology of the child, and the environment, and is there a fit there, which would be a way to analyze the situation, the negative self-talk is just sort of generalizing everything, blaming, putting labels on, and there's no productive analysis happening that could actually provide some type of solution. And then the other piece of this is that when you're really tired, it's the end of the day and the kids are misbehaving, that emotional reasoning kicks in and it's like you feel horrible, so everything must be horrible. And then different day, sunnier, brighter, morning, more energy, things feel better, right? So that emotional reasoning really can be impacted by the physical demands of the job. All right, let me know if this example made sense to you. And I'm going to go on in a moment to the example about boundaries, but I also want to talk about what is underneath this negative self-talk and both the situations that trigger our negative self-talk and the ways that we talk to ourselves are related to our negative core beliefs. And those did form probably very young, and they stick with us throughout life until we heal from them. And they're kind of the motor that keeps this negative self-talk going, even when we sort of know better, even when we begin to identify it with these different cognitive distortions, even after we separate it from it a little bit, we often can't really make progress until we heal that deeper stuff. So there's many ways to go about that. Therapy can help, EMDR therapy. I have a free PDF that many people have found super helpful called Transform Your Negative Core Beliefs. I'll put the link in the description if you're interested. It helps you identify what your negative core belief is, and you can see how it links to the negative self-talk. So in that parent example that I used, somebody who is immediately going to, I'm a terrible parent, may have grown up with the negative core belief of, I'm not good enough. It's a very common one. And if you feel I'm not good enough in this area, that area, throughout your whole life, you're going to feel not good enough as a parent. If you grew up with a negative core belief of, I can't trust others, you may not rely on others to help you as a parent, to help you in this incredibly important area. If you can't trust others or you can't rely on others, you won't be bringing in the support that we all need. So don't misunderstand me. Not all of our problems are due to our negative beliefs or our cognitive distortions. There are real problems in the world. But if we have these negative core beliefs and we have these distortions, right? It's distorted, it's not true. We may not be able to identify where the solutions could be to our problems. Example number 2, somebody who struggles with boundaries. Now for this one, I'm going to start with a negative core belief because many people, not all, there's many different negative core beliefs you could have that create boundary problems, but a very common one is that my needs aren't as important as other people's needs. This could be taken so far as to feel like I'm not worthy, like I'm not worthy of the care that other people need, or even to the extent of I'm sort of worthless as a human. So those would be like the deeper underlying negative core beliefs that manifest on the surface with boundary issues where we don't take care of ourselves, where we have a hard time saying no to other people, where we do a lot of caretaking of somebody else, right? So those are the more surface symptoms of those very deep core beliefs. Now, the cognitive distortions that could go with this could be should statements. I should take care of that person because they're sick. I should help this coworker at work because she's struggling. I should do this despite the fact that I need that over there, or I'm overwhelmed, burnt out, tired, or despite the fact that this really isn't a need of the other person, it's a want of the other person, but I'm treating their want as more important than my need. So should statements are a very common cognitive distortion for people who struggle to set boundaries and hold boundaries. Blame and personalization is another biggie here. Like, if they fail, I'm to blame. If I have an alcoholic relative and they start using alcohol again and I didn't do something I should have done, then I'm to blame. So very often people who might relate to these statements grew up parentified. They grew up in a home where they really had kind of the role of a parent to their parents or parent to their siblings. They were given responsibilities beyond their years. They may have grown up thinking that they were the competent one, being treated as if they were the competent one, but then they could never get out of that role. Or sometimes we're the identified caretaker in the family, right? There might be one of the two parents may also be in the caretaker role, but sometimes one of the kids is identified as the caretaker. And then it's your role to always be caretaking. So these types of roles that become very rigid, and then we replay it in different situations later in life, we learn those very young. And those are the deeper issues that then drive the current day behavior and drive the negative self-talk and the cognitive distortions. And even that element of labeling that goes on within a family, right? It could be, well, you're the competent one. Your sibling is the one that needs help. It's a blanket labeling, and there's an implied should in it. That's all cognitive distortions. And then we internalize all those messages and we keep doing it to ourselves until we can heal from it. So if you relate to either of these examples, but in particular to the boundary one, the program I have called the Ultimate Boundary Program really focuses on the negative core beliefs that drive our problem setting boundaries, drives the problem with holding to boundaries, and kind of drives that confusion around what's my responsibility and what's somebody else's responsibility. We talk in that program about emotional enmeshment, right? This feeling of like that other person's emotion of disappointment or anger or hurt is my responsibility to take care of and not to exacerbate. And of course, we never want to like purposefully hurt someone or purposefully make somebody angry. But if we are basically, our behavior is fine and their reaction is to get upset, then that's not our responsibility. But learning not to be emotionally enmeshed, which is a core boundary problem, takes some time and effort. So we focus on that. We focus on emotional regulation, which is key for boundary setting and holding. And we focus on rewiring these negative core beliefs that are holding us back. So I'll put a picture of the program on the screen here with the URL, and I'll put the link in the description. Check it out. I think it could be super helpful for you. And to close, what I'd love to know is, do you have a cognitive distortion underneath your negative self-talk that I didn't mention today? I would love to know. Let me know what it is, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.